Italian Football Podcast.
So we'll start off with the news, the sudden news, shock news really in some ways, that Roberto Mancini has resigned as manager of the Italy national team. This is a developing story, so we don't have all the full details of exactly why he left and suddenly resigned as Italy coach. So we'll start there. My understanding is that there is a number of issues that led to this. Some of them have been brewing for a few months now. There are some issues behind the scenes with his backroom staff. We had Alberico Ivani resigning, one of his closest assistants resigning in the last few weeks, reportedly over disagreement over a number of issues, but especially over Mancini's reluctance to stop playing Leonardo Bonucci, who he played in the Nations League semi-finals to disastrous effect in June, and also Mancini reportedly unhappy with some backroom appointments which went without his okay. None of this isn't confirmed. These are just reports. And recently we saw, of course, it could be a coincidence, we recently saw Gigi Buffon coming in as the replacement to the late Gianluca Vialli. That was only, a week ago or so. So who knows? There's also reports Mancini's tired of fighting the Italian system by himself. He was recently named as the coordinator for all of Italy's various youth teams, trying to get a kind of synergy between all the various youth teams from the very youngest Italian youth teams right up to the senior team, and also a couple of other things. First of all, the losses to two of his dearest friends, Gianluca Vialli and Sinisa Mihajlovic, this year, and also we can't shy away from it. He has an offer from the Saudi Arabia national team, and I'm sure that has played a role in him making the decision to actually go ahead and resign. So Nima, first of all, what's your reaction to the resignation, and why do you think it has come to this?
I think it's a combination of many things. I think he's been there for a few years. I think he's tired of fighting, and he's tired of things not working the way that he wants. And this isn't the first time he's done this. Let's remember when he had enough at Inter that summer as well. When he was just exhausted, he was like, "No, I'm not doing this anymore." He'd been there a couple of years, well, in total 4.5 years before leaving, 4 or 5 years before leaving, and it's something similar now. He has to feel that things improve behind the scenes for him in order to be able to do his work, and he doesn't feel that that's what's happening. He's not where he was when he took over. He's changed in the sense that he wants to grow. He wants the Italian football to grow. He wants Italian football to improve, and they're not improving, and they're really not improving in his mind, that is. So he's got an offer. He's been there for a long time. I think it's a combination of many, many things. He's got the Saudi Arabian big money offer. They are, if he goes there, he'll probably have much more power to build something more long term. He doesn't seem. I know that he was rumored, or I know that there was interest from PSG a year or two ago, and he was kind of mulling that over. But I think he's kind of in a position now in his career where he wants to work more long term, with the national teams, and in order to do so, I think Saudi Arabia just maybe offered him a better solution altogether.
Offered him more money as well. Let's not forget that. I mean, we're looking at 18 million a year. I'm sure that helped him make his decision. And he had the.
Well, of course. I mean, you look at it like this: you get paid more, less stress, a more efficient organization. You have more power. People do more. You get to decide more how you want to work. You get paid more. You don't have to argue with Serie A owners and Serie A presidents, and you don't have to argue with FIGC presidents and FIGC's internal structure and all the politics that goes with that. It's just at some point you feel, oh, I'm done with this. Let's go somewhere else.
Yeah, I think what's underpinning this is definitely his frustration at being unable to, and we'll come to it in his achievements in a bit, but he's done an amazing job in trying, and obviously winning the Euros in 2020 or 2021 was thanks to that in terms of changing the culture of Italian football, moving away from many of the backward, outdated facets of Italian football, starting from the style of football, trying to play a positive, progressive, modern type of football, as opposed to a defensive, low block, counter-attacking type of football, through to trying to, and I know this will come to that, whether he actually went against that in the end, trying to give more opportunities for youth, trying to encourage more youngsters getting chances, looking outside the box, partly by necessity to find youngsters like Wilfried Gnonto, like Matteo Retegui, trying to change the culture of Italian football. And I think that he'd become exhausted trying to do that, because we've seen many try to do that, whether it's from an ownership point of view, when we've had foreign owners come in, like American owners, to clubs and trying to build stadiums, or all the things that we complain about in this podcast all the time. Even the simple things like how you market the league, how you broadcast the league, all these things that Italy's so backward in, and that has a knock-on effect on everything, including the Italy national team. I think he'd become frustrated and exhausted at basically he was on his own, because he was the one man fighting against the system, and in the end you can't win alone. And I think in the end I think he just had enough of that, and I think that we'll see. It's going to come out in the next days.
No, I'm sure. I think it's all of the above, and he's been there for many years. And I think like I said, I think when you're at a job for 4 or 5 years and you've had great success like he's had, and your goals and what you want to do changes with that, evolves with that, and he wants to do something else, and he's tired of butting heads and fighting with Serie A clubs, the Serie A organized Lega Calcio. He's not exhausted of fighting with FIGC. And so, Saudi Arabia is a different project. The Asian Cup is coming up in January, February. That's what, he's going to be targeting with. And of course, I think they're going to bring him there to do, to work towards the next World Cup and maybe even beyond, until whenever Saudi can host their own World Cup, whether that's in 10 years' time or whenever that is, 10, 12 years' time or whenever that is.
Yeah.
But I think he's just tired of arguing with people, to be honest. I think at some point you reach a point where you're like, enough with this, enough.
Yeah. It is strange how things changed very quickly. But let's have a look at his legacy and his achievements. And obviously, there is one achievement, of course, that stands out and will make him a legend forever, and that is winning the Euros in 2020 or 2021. And I mean, what an achievement! I mean, where he took Italy from, failing to qualify for the 2018 World Cup, a team that was in an embarrassment, not just a national embarrassment, a world embarrassment. A team under Ventura with no identity, playing the kind of football that was stuck in the dark ages. No young players coming through, no real hope. No one had any hope. None of us had hope. Especially when you marry that with the struggles of the Serie A and Italian football as a whole in the last decade. No one gave Italy any hope of being a challenger for Euro 2020. Certainly not when Mancini took over. And then to go from that to winning the Euros, I mean, absolutely incredible. And people forget now, he was the world record. Italy have the world record unbeaten run. It went 3 years without defeat under Mancini, from October 2018 to October 2021. People forget about that. So that just shows, yes, the last 2 years of Mancini's reign, things started to go stale, things went wrong, he made some mistakes, but those first 3 years, Nima, I mean, absolutely unbelievable to go 3 years unbeaten, and then during the middle of that, to win the Euros. Incredible achievement.
For sure. I think in his career, he's got a very interesting career, because if you look at how he started out and the kind of football he played when he was at Lazio or Fiorentina and Inter, and then how he metamorphosized, changed completely into, we went through this, almost crazy metamorphosis tactically when he came to Manchester City and started playing some sort of passing possession football where, focus was more on dominating possession and imposing yourself on the opposition, rather than having, what he had at Lazio and Inter, which was a safety first kind of approach. I mean, at Inter, essentially, it was just Ibrahimovic and Inshallah. Let's be honest. It was give it to Maicon, go with God, then give it to the Swedish God and hope that you win. I mean, that was just how Inter played for 3 years under him. And that's why essentially he got sacked as well, because it was dreary and unwatchable in Europe, and they failed continuously. There was no balance and lines, and it just didn't work. That, and also, of course, he's a temperamental person. I mean, he resigned at the end of. He said he was going to resign at the end of the season after the Liverpool loss. Just by the way he dropped it, I never forget that press conference where he goes, "Oh yeah, and by the way, I'm leaving Inter at the end of the season, and yeah, this has nothing to do with the Mercato or anything like that," and then just walked out. Very, very very calmly, just dropped that. And then, of course, everyone's jaw dropped, and the next couple of weeks were spent trying to walk that back, and he decided to stay on. And of course, by then, Moratti had contacted Mourinho, and everything. The rest is history. But then he goes to City, and then he changes completely who he is, the tactics, how he plays. Of course, with their money, it's easier to do that with that wallet than it is with Moratti's wallet and the Serie A club's wallet. Until he goes to. He went to Galatasaray, won a cup there. He was quite the cup coach, wasn't he?
Yeah. Look, a number of Coppa Italias.
And also the Turkish Cup, and he won the FA Cup, if I'm not mistaken, as well. He's a cup coach, and then when you take that into he goes to Inter, he does a decent job. The year and a half he was there, got fed up with the chaos that was, walked out. De Boer came in, ruined everything. Suning stepped in because they'd already bought the club, but they weren't hands-on. Suning step in, throw out Tohir and his ilk, and then we're from here. But then if you look at when he takes over Italy, and where Italy were, like you said, and to where they ended, it was, to me, in my opinion, that Azzurri team, that. For me, that those 2 years, those 2.5 years, leading, leading to the European Championship win, I think those are the greatest achievement he has had in his career.
Of course,
because and he has a lot of achievements. Let's not forget about that. But what he did there is the high mark, the high point of everything he's ever done, and I think. This might be it. I don't think we will see Roberto Mancini coaching another big side. I don't think we'll see Mancini coaching another big national team in the sense, like the traditional sense of Brazil or Argentina or Germany or Italy or France or England or anything like that. I think he now goes to Saudi Arabia to try to win the Asian Cup. And then from then on, I think we're talking about someone who will take more direct, technical appointments and that kind of thing. I don't think we'll see him on the pitches after the Saudi Arabia.
Well, it depends how long he plans to stay at Saudi Arabia. I mean, 7 years until they potentially host the World Cup.
I don't think he's going to be there 7 years.
Well, that's the
but
point, isn't it? So,
yeah, but I don't think he's going to be there 7 years. I do think that he will go there over the Asian Cup, which we know Saudi want to win, and also the next World Cup. I think those are the main things, the main targets.
Yeah, and what are your most memorable moments for Mancini in
Italy
as the coach of Italy? I mean, from the Euros, there's obviously so many from the Euros.
Yeah, but for me, it's his Azzurri revolution when he took over. And he, because I remember I was tweeting about this when he took over. I was very, very happy that he was the appointment, and there was not very many people who were happy except with me. And the reason that I was very, very happy and I knew that he was going to do well is because I've seen him. He works well with youth, and he's not afraid to give young players chances in important moments. He's given unknown players their Serie A debuts and Milan derbies. Gnocchi, for example. I was there. It was crazy. Like who's starting? It was weird. Everyone in the press box.
He does have a good eye for talent. We've seen that in the transfer market. Like he's always identified players as a club coach. Even like if you look at Manchester City, the players that he bought from Manchester City, he's always had an excellent eye for a talent. He's always been able to.
Let's remember, he was also the guy he's also the guy who gave a 17-year-old Mario Balotelli his debut against Juve in the Coppa Italia, and he scores twice.
Yeah,
he is unbelievable in that aspect. But for me, his Azzurri revolution is, and the midfield, the way that he structured this 4-3-3 and the possession-based football and building a tailor-made.
Yeah, nobody thought that Jorginho and Verratti could work together.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to get to.
Nobody thought
tailor-made role for Verratti and Jorginho in midfield was truly, truly, truly remarkable in the way that they could retain possession and so for me, it's his it's everything. It's the Azzurri revolution that he took over, and
and it was all deserved as well. It wasn't a fluke. It was you don't go 3 years unbeaten. No.
There was structure. He built something for 3 years.
He built a fantastic team that were the best team at the Euros. Italy were the best team at the Euros. They deserved to win the Euros. They had a little bit of fortune, of course, if you win 2 penalty shootouts, but you don't win a tournament without a bit of luck. If you win 2 penalty shootouts, you've had a bit of luck. But they were the best team at the tournament. They played the best football at the tournament, which you don't usually say about Italy. Italy national teams. They're not usually teams that are good on the eye.
That depends on what your definition of beauty is. I think the most for me, I love that
attacking beauty. Let's say attacking beauty.
For me, Euro 2000, that Italy side in Euro 2000 with that defense of Nesta, Cannavaro, Maldini, Giuliano, Zambrotta is truly unbelievable.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's reframe that as attacking beauty, modern attacking beauty.
Yeah. But here's the thing. What he does for me, that's what I'm saying. The fact that he changed not just Italian perceptions of Italy and what Italian football and Italian national team is, but also foreign ones as well. A lot of people were completely surprised by Italy, people who don't tune in to football that much. They were like, "Whoa! Since when did Italy start playing like that, like this?" I mean, just the opening night. But the embrace with Vialli, the crying, those two.
Yeah, absolutely. The embrace with Vialli, I think, is the moment. If we're talking about Mancini himself, yeah, absolutely iconic. That is. And obviously with Vialli then passing on not long after, 18 months or so after, then, of course, that is even more poignant. But so many great memories from those Euros. That opening night, which was beautiful with the opening ceremony and the who was it, the singer Andrea Bocelli, and then all the way through, Chiesa's winner against Austria, the Insigne curler against Belgium, Jorginho's penalty against Spain, and then of course the final. I mean, Saka Chiellini, Chiellini, Saka. I mean, that is the most memorable moment from that final, even though it was like, yeah,
it's just Italian old school, defending just on the line, getting a yellow card. That's not a red card offense, but that is a yellow card offense if there ever was one. And to do it the way he just shamelessly did it.
No, all the memes after the final as well, a lot of them involving Mancini, like Mancini as the Queen and Mancini as the what was it, the Braveheart as William Wallace from Braveheart, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it was magical.
It was, and he's.
But just before we move on,
though, on a personal thing, I think he's one of the most elegant human beings I've ever met and ever had the chance to ask a question of. He's so he just when he's just a general, like he's got this kind of like superstar aura about him, when he walks into a room, and he's I'm gonna miss him in Italian football because he's also a rebel as well. He doesn't, if you look at his own playing career and the kind of player he was.
He's a very emotional and impulsive person.
He's a rebel. He is a rebel, and he goes his own way. And if he's not happy with something, he explodes. But I mean, like Sven-Goran Eriksson said, that when he's been on our podcast twice, that look, Mancini was already a coach when I had him as a player. He said he used to ask me details about. Sven used to say this, told us that he asked me details. But basically, Sven said at Sampdoria already he let him run the training sessions.
Yeah. Just before we move on to look at who could replace him, we have to obviously touch on kind of what he did wrong and his failures and disappointments of his spell, because there is one big elephant in the room, and that is that despite winning the Euros, he failed to qualify Italy for the World Cup. We've gone into that kind of why that happened. Some of it was bad luck. Some of it was Mancini making mistakes. And I think he did make some mistakes in those second 2 years. And I think he made the classic mistake that's often made by Italian national team coaches in the past, in that he held on for too long to certain players from that Euro winning team. And Bonucci, I guess, Leonardo Bonucci is the player that stands out the most, but there were others as well. And that is... I think that cost him as well. Even now, if we're looking at why he's resigned, I do think that's played a part, hasn't it?
Absolutely. You can't get past that, because a lot of that was a silly thing too as well, because it was just, they had 3 match points, didn't they? And they, use it continuously, using Jorginho as your penalty taker. This ridiculous stubbornness, which he had at Inter as well, or throughout his coaching career, which used to be like, there's no need, like you turn small, insignificant details into, battles of, morality of life and death. It doesn't need to be that. It's just in your head. You just make a minor tweak to refresh things and stay with things. Everything does not need to be, you don't have to go to war. You don't have to die on every hill. And that's a little bit Mancini as well. He does pick, like many coaches, great coaches, they pick peculiar hills to die on. And he picked a really weird hill to die on with Bonucci, Jorginho as a penalty taker and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I also think that the lack of the plan B, also, I do feel like Italy started to become found out, like their style of play, their little movements, teams work them out after a while.
Well, of course, that happens to everyone.
And they became sterile. And that's why, exactly. And that's why the greatest coaches always, especially in modern football, this is probably more true in modern football, they have to reinvent and tweak their tactics and their movements. And
has anyone ever been better than Sir Alex Ferguson and Pep Guardiola in the modern era?
Well, I think Pep Guardiola absolutely the best. I mean,
Sir Alex Ferguson used to tweak and change all the time towards the. I mean, he won a title with a team that last season where that was. I mean, that team was barely seventh.
Ferguson changed his players a lot. Ferguson would change players. This is something like the great Juventus did in the 90s. They would often change their players because they felt that players would lose their... And this was probably more down to players losing their determination and their hunger. And they would sell those players on and bring in new ones. Ferguson would do that a lot as well. He would sell players on, bring in new squads, and he was great at creating totally new teams that would still go on and win. Whereas I think Pep Guardiola, what he is brilliant at is he is a genius. I mean, he's the best coach of his generation. There's no doubt about that. At just tweaking certain things on the pitch, like for example, last season, bring the inverted fullbacks, putting John Stones into a central midfield position, or the right and left fullbacks coming into midfield, and things like that. That is what Guardiola's doing, and that's something that Mancini wasn't able to do. Italy became sterile. They couldn't score. They couldn't create chances. We know they have a problem in attack, but I think that was more down to teams just had worked out all their movements. They knew all the patterns of play. They knew where the players were going, and that needed to be changed. And he did try and change that in the last few months, too late, like going to like a 3-4-3, 3-5-2, but it didn't really work. And maybe that's why it potentially could be a good thing that he's moved on, that now Italy will have someone fresh, someone new to give to the opponents. Will have to try and work out. The question is, though, of course, and the key thing will be who replaces Mancini, because this will be key in determining whether it can be a good thing for Italy that Mancini's moved on. So the front runner at the moment is Luciano Spalletti. The issue with him is that he has a 3 million clause, which Aurelio De Laurentiis has put in, that if Italy or any other team want to sign him now this season, they'll have to pay 3 million. So there's Spalletti.
Well,
Conte.
That's something that has to be able to be negotiated. I mean, the reason he put that in is because he didn't want him to go to another Serie A side, which I understand. Yeah. But this is the Italian national team, and I think that is just, Aurelio needs to, there he can back off, I think, no?
We hope so. We hope he's not, but we know De Laurentiis.
Yeah, but I mean, for the love of God, this is a national team. It's not a direct rival. It doesn't impact you in any shape, size, or form. This is silly.
Yeah.
It's a silly. I get the clause to protect you going into the season. I get that, absolutely. But we're talking about a national team level. It's got nothing to do with club football.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. So there's only two qualified candidates, basically, Luciano Spalletti and Antonio Conte, that are available. Then we come to the other names that have been bandied about: Fabio Cannavaro, Daniele De Rossi, Rino Gattuso, Fabio Grosso, due to his very, very close friendship with Gravina. So watch out for Grosso. If we know anything, we learned anything from Italian football. And then, of course, Max Allegri, who was heavily linked in the days leading up to...
I don't see Juve allowing Allegri to leave a couple of weeks before the season starts. It's just not going to happen.
A few days, but yeah. Well, yeah. So anyway, the FIGC say they're going to make a decision in the next few days. So for me, there's only one man I want, and that's Luciano Spalletti.
Yeah, Spalletti, without a doubt. And the 3 million, they need to sit down with De Laurentiis and basically sort that out somehow, because it's, if we're talking about the good of Italian football and the national team, Spalletti is the perfect candidate. He's at the right age. He's coming off the back of his greatest achievement to crown a fantastic career by winning the Scudetto with Napoli. He plays a football that is the natural continuation of what Mancini tried to build on. It's the next step, if you will. He's also in his 60s. This would be a way, and he's also, I think he's also the kind of character that could unite all of Italy and Italian football behind a banner. Because we've seen him do it at his clubs, and the character he's very charming, a bit crazy. People like that. He's a little bit of an oddball. No, I think Spalletti just ticks every box. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. I agree for all those reasons. I want Spalletti over Conte. For starters, I think Conte will be too expensive. Conte's salary will be too expensive for starters. But I want a continuation of Mancini's vision of how football should be played. I don't want them going to a Conte who will come in with a back three play a 3-5-2 or 3-4-3, and I just think Spalletti makes sense. The way that the football, I think that the adaptation to Spalletti will be smoother, and we've got to remember, we've got World Cup qualifiers in a few weeks. This is not good timing, and we have to win these games. Euro qualifiers, sorry. In a few weeks, we have to win these matches. Otherwise,
Antonio Conte would be again throwing everything out and bringing him in again. You know how he is. You know how volatile he is. You know how emotional and moody he is. And you've only got 3 weeks to do it, and he's going to start arguing with everyone and everything under the sun. You're going to restart.
And also, exactly, and I think Spalletti's more fitted to this so-called vision project for the future, which Mancini has, tried to put into place, trying to make it to be, progressive and modern. And not saying Conte isn't, but I'm saying that he will come in and I think disrupt that to play and to manage in the way that
it's a completely different style of football. It's Calcio verticale, which is very rigid and system based in that sense. It's not as fluid. It's much more. It's more like a marching band, and Mancini and Spalletti is more progressive rock, if you know what I mean. Like it's just Conte is boom, boom, boom. You go there, A, B, C. Like it's very, very system based, and what we've got there is you've got possession based football. It's much more fluid. It's much more flowing, and Spalletti, is a continuation of that of what Mancini has put there, although it's slightly different. Of course, in how they play, but no, for me, it's got to be Spalletti and Aurelio. For the love of God, this is preventing the national team from having a coach for €3 million. Like, sort yourself out, mate.
Yeah, let's hope. Let's hope, because if we cannot be going with someone, as much as I love them as players, legends, we cannot be going with
Cannavaro,
De Rossi. I mean, that will just be disastrous.
I mean,
it really will.
It's a ridiculous. De Rossi and Cannavaro are not at that level. Grosso did well, if I'm not mistaken. He got Frosinone promoted from the Serie B last season.
But we're talking,
we're talking
qualifications.
Exactly. Yes, as a player, but I mean, and also, none of those guys, especially De Rossi and Grosso, they're in the beginning of their careers. They should, let them grow. We don't want to burn out coaches this early in their career like Juve did with Andrea Pirlo. We never know what could have happened with that career if he had time to grow and mature as a coach. Putting Grosso in charge of the national team and him flopping would be
it would be another Roberto Donadoni from Euro 2008. That's the kind of appointment that it would be. You just don't make that kind of appointment unless you really are trying to cut costs and not and pay a really small salary.